All right, in this video, let's look at the key features and the key structures of a muscle fiber. Okay, before we get started, let's name a few different structures that you are already aware of, but we're going to rename them and just confuse you probably a little bit more, okay? We know that all cells will have a plasma membrane. In a muscle fiber, we are now going to call that a sarcolemma. So let's look at this. Let me just write these out. Sarcolemma equals plasma membrane. Okay. The other one, we also know that cells have cytoplasm. In a muscle fiber, we are going to call that sarcoplasm. So sarcoplasm equals cytoplasm. Okay. And one other thing that we are going to name differently are one of the different organelles within the muscle fiber itself. Now we know all cells have a variety of different organelles. There's going to be the Golgi apparatus, there's ribosomes. Muscle fibers will have those as well, but we are going to rename one of those. So a organelle that's found in a normal cell is your endoplasmic reticulum. And if you recall, endoplasmic reticulum comes in two different flavors, rough and smooth. Okay, so we are going to rename the smooth endoplasmic reticulum to sarcoplasmic reticulum. So let's write that one out. Equals smooth ER. Okay, those are very similar type of structures. The next thing that I want to point out is some of the basics with skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle is multinucleated. Multi is more than one. Nuclei is the nucleus. All cells will have the one nucleus, or most cells. Red blood cells don't. But skeletal muscle fibers are multinucleated. They can be very long, upwards of 30 centimeters in length. So that's a pretty long cell that we're looking at. So let me just draw real briefly a very basic visual representation of skeletal muscle. I am definitely no Picasso. I'm more like a third grader at best. So I guess it would be like this. So what I'm drawing here is kind of the cross view of a skeletal muscle fiber, something like this. And let me do, I'm going to do orange as the nucleus. So this is a nucleus, that's a nucleus, another nucleus, another nucleus, another nucleus, another one. Okay, now this whole thing is one cell. Okay, so the next question is how does this become multinucleated? Okay, well, skeletal muscle fiber is formed from an embryonic stem cell called a myoblast. So let me come over here. Myoblast equals an embryonic, that's RYON, stem cell. And each one of those myoblasts have a nucleus, okay? And during development, a number of those myoblasts fuse together to make skeletal fiber. Now, if you have a myoblast here with a nucleus and a myoblast here with a nucleus, and you put them together, well, now we have two nuclei. So this is how skeletal muscle is generated. Now, not all myoblasts fuse together. Some choose not to. The myoblasts that don't fuse together to become skeletal muscle fiber are renamed to a satellite cell. Just like a satellite that's orbiting, okay, the Earth, a satellite cell. And satellite cells helps to assist or repair injured skeletal muscle fibers. We're not going to get into that aspect, but just know that they can assist in the repair process. Okay. Another feature of skeletal muscle fibers is something that we call that it is striated. So when you're looking at skeletal muscle fiber underneath the microscope, we have light and dark lines. So let me just let me do this in red. Okay, so we're looking at it under a microscope, and we see lines much like this. Okay, and it goes the whole length. They're usually straight, not crooked like that. So we have areas that are darker and lighter. That visual representation is termed striations. So skeletal muscle is striated. Just to let you know, smooth muscle is not. Cardiac muscle is. Skeletal muscle is voluntary. By that I mean you can voluntarily contract that muscle. I'm looking at my biceps, contract. Boop. Okay, it contracts. That's voluntary action. You cannot voluntarily control how fast food moves through your intestines. Anybody who's been on a very long road and has got to go to the bathroom realizes your control is quite limited on how fast that's going through. Okay, so let's look at not my drawing of skeletal muscle, but what an actual picture really is. Okay, so what we're looking at on here is this is the nucleus. Okay, those are the nuclei coming around here. So they're multinucleated. Now we have more than one muscle fiber here. Okay, so we're going to have fiber there, fiber there, fiber there, and so forth all the way down. But what I wanted to point out, you can see the light and dark striations from this. Those are called striations. And in an upcoming video, we're going to talk specifically what's making those striations. And those are going to be what we're going to call your myofilaments. So at the end of this video, we'll briefly mention the myofilaments, and then the upcoming video will go into much more detail on that. So with that, let me set up another screen here, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now I've got another picture on the screen, and this is a magnified view of a specific muscle fiber. So we've named the sarcolemma, we've named the cytoplasmic reticulum, we've named sarcoplasm, or sarcoplasmic reticulum, I'm sorry. So let's point what those are and name a few other structures. And then the upcoming video, we're going to go into much more detail on the sarcolemma and the other structures. So the first thing, let's look at this structure here. Now this structure that's kind of folded back. You can imagine this coming back down. So this structure covers the entire area. This is the muscle fiber. This is the sarcolemma. That's the sarcolemma. The next thing that we want to look at, we can't see it represented on here, is the sarcoplasm, okay? The sarcoplasm, let me just do this in a light blue, okay? The sarcoplasm is just kind of all through here, okay? That's the liquid that kind of fills it up. Let me get rid of that color because that's just annoying, all right? So the sarcoplasm is just a liquid. There's not a visual representation of this. We can see that there is, let me change the color. You can see this structure here. That's a mitochondria. This is the nucleus. This is the nucleus. That's a nucleus, okay? So the sarcoplasm is the liquid. I'm not going to write that out. The other thing is the sarcoplasmic reticulum, okay? That is similar to the smooth ER, endoplasmic reticulum. And that is this purple mesh. So let me do a purple color here. Well, it's kind of a dark blue purple. We'll do purple. It works. So you can see this kind of mesh that we're looking at. That's this kind of stuff, okay? That is the sarcoplasmic reticulum. That's the sarcoplasmic reticulum. And another structure, and this is going to be a new structure, and I'm going to keep it in purple because it's part of the sarcoplasmic reticulum. It's kind of a, imagine driving down a cul-de-sac, okay, where you can only go in one way and exit that same way, so it's a blind end. If you look at this, we've got this meshing look, and then you got this vertical purple line next to this green line, okay? So you've got those two purple lines on each side of the green one. Those vertical lines, let me go this way. Those are called the terminal cisternae. Terminal cisternae. It's basically a reservoir for calcium ions. So let me put calcium ions here. So it's a reservoir for calcium ions. We'll get into why it's a reservoir for that, okay? Right now, let's just name the structures. The other thing we have not mentioned, and let me do this in green. There we go. On the sarcolemma, you can see these little dots here, okay? And you can see it all the way through there. And this is how it differs from other plasma membranes. The sarcolemma has these little, let me just call them holes. They're not actually holes. They're essentially deep invaginations of the sarcolemma. So let me kind of draw that out real quick. Oh, so we're on a green. So this green, where's my cursor? There it is. So let's look, if this is a cross view of the sarcolemma, okay, we're looking at it on end, and then we come up to one of these little holes. That hole is actually dipping down like that. And then you got another hole. Boy, I'm not really drawing these straight at all, okay? So these holes, okay, these invaginations, those are called, I'm running out of space. That's a T-tubule. And the T in T-tubule stands for transverse, okay? The purpose of that is to allow the electrical current to penetrate deeper into the muscle. The next video, we'll go through the sarcolemma a little bit more specific so you can understand how that electrical charge propagates over the cell membrane. So the next video, we'll do this one. For now, let's just call that the T-tubule. Now let's pair another thing. Let me go back to purple, okay? And these vertical lines that you see on the purple down here, okay? Those vertical lines that attach to the sarcolemma, those vertical lines run parallel to the T-tubule, okay? And then those vertical lines attach to the rest of the sarcolemma. So it's doing something like that. Now let me back it up here so get those off, okay? So what we're looking at on this, if you were to look at the two T-tubules, I'm sorry, let's back that up. Two terminal cisternae. Oh, I didn't, oh yeah, there it is. So the terminal cisternae, let me draw this. That's the terminal cisternae. If you put two of the terminal cisternae and one T-tubule, that's called a triad. So a triad. Triad equals two terminal cisternae and one T-tubule. That's called a triad. Okay. The next thing that we're going to look at is the structure that's sticking out here. So let me do this in, well, let me do this in blue. That's good enough. We're looking at this structure, and then that structure is basically all those little round ones as well, okay? Those are called myofibrils. So those, let me just write here, myofibril, okay? Myofibrils account for 80%, or it occupies about 80% of the space within the muscle fiber, okay? So let's do the next thing and explain what the myofibril is. And what we've done here is we just magnified it into this bottom picture. So this is a myofibril as well, okay? You can see it's made up of those things. Those are called, let me go over here, myofilaments. Okay, so a myofilament is made up of two different types of proteins that we're going to focus on. Those are going to be actin and myosin. So actin and myosin. Okay, so actin and myosin, we haven't discussed it yet. We'll do that on another video. Actin and myosin are contractile proteins that make up myofilaments. Multiple myofilaments make up a myofibril, which occupies 80% of the muscle fiber. That muscle fiber is surrounded by the sarcolemma. Okay? So, with that being said, let's look at the well, let me figure out what we're going to look at, and I'll get right back to you. All right, see you in the next video.